Hi there. Welcome to OUTwright 2020, BUT. My name is Rusty Tennant. I'm the Artistic Director of the OUTwright Theater Festival and of Fuse Theater Ensemble. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Even though this year's festival is taking place online, we'd still like to honor the over 60 indigenous tribes that call this area home, from the Multnomah to the Wasco to the Clackamas to the bands of Chinook to the Molalla and the many other tribes that have called the Willamette River Valley and the Columbia River Valley home over the years. We'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge this unique period in intersectionality that we are all experiencing right now. This past year has seen the practice of theater decimated by COVID-19. And this, coupled with centuries of a plague of bigotry and racism, has made June a truly unique time in our history. Unfortunately, the practice of theater, the ultimate mirror held up to nature, has been limited in our response. We here at the OUTwright Theater Festival and at Fuse Theater Ensemble stand in solidarity with our BIPOC friends and family in this fight to finally end racism. Black lives matter. Black trans lives matter. And that's why this week, OUTwright Theater Festival will bring you the greatest collection of trans and gender nonconforming talent the city of Portland has ever seen compiled into one event. Here's a lineup of your evening. We'll start with an amuse-bouche of Alec Lugo singing a selection from The Pursuit of Happiness, a new musical by Ernie Lijoi. Now, The Pursuit of Happiness was supposed to be our feature production for 2020, but unfortunately, due to COVID, we had to postpone. But I promise you, as soon as we are able to gather again and share space, this will be one of the first ones we tackle. Immediately following that, we will have our feature production for the evening. Now, each of our feature productions is written by a trans or gender nonconforming playwright and also features trans or gender nonconforming characters. And then we'll wrap it all up with some poetry from Zelos Marchandt entitled After the Fall. Zelos is a local activist, playwright, all-around amazing inspiration, and a brilliant poet. I hope you can join us. Links to donations for Fuse or OUTwright can be found in the comment sections of the stream that you are following. We'd also, however, really encourage you to donate to your local Black Lives Matter chapter, or the Rose City Justice, or the Southern Poverty Law Center, or any number of institutions out there right now doing the good work. Thank you so much. They need your support. So thank you all. Thank you for tuning in this unique medium for us. We're not film editors. We're not TV makers. We're theater people. But we're trying our hardest to be able to bring you content and keep OUTwright out there at a time when we desperately need it. So thank you for joining in. Thank you for dismissing the little strings and bells and whistles that you might see in what we're doing. And thank you so much for being a part of OUTwright 2020. We really do love you. Thank you.
We were 16 years old in a park, in a clearing of trees. We were young and alive and afraid, hoping nobody sees. Both of us timid and both of us tense. Suddenly everything all making sense. You and I face to face with my back to the fence, and the fit of your coat, and the shape of your chin, and the lump in my throat, and the tone of your skin, and your hand on my back, and the slowing of time, and my limbs going slack, and this feeling like I'm disappearing for that one perfect moment of life when the doubt melts away. Disappearing in the clearing for the first and last time in my life. I thought I'll be okay. We were 16 years old in a park, in a clearing of trees, when the hate and the hurt of this world cut us off at the knees. Suddenly voices, both angry and tense, suddenly nothing at all making sense. You and I facing them with our backs to the fence, and it turns on a dime with the tear in your coat, and the stopping of time, and the hand on my throat, and the boot on my back, and the blood on my chin, and my world going black where I truly begin. Disappearing when the hate and the hurt in this world is too much to be faced. Disappearing in the clearing, thinking maybe it's better if people like me are erased. So they send you away where you pray to be healed, and the lies become truth, and the truth is concealed, and that part of yourself by the fence in the field. Well, he never stood up, and he never moved on. He just fades out of you until one day he's gone, till this pillar of lies that you're standing upon all comes crashing down all around, and you find yourself back in the park by the fence on the ground. At the scene of the crime, of a brutal attack, where you're frozen in time with the boot on your back, and the blood on your coat, and the tear in your skin, and the hand on your throat. But it's time to begin reappearing, and start clearing away all those decades of doubt and unease. Reappearing in the clearing, when I open my eyes and I see that it's time to stand up and break free. But a part of me might always be 16 years old in a park, in a clearing of trees.
Welcome to The Fear of Speaking, the class for those terrified of speaking in public. Today you'll hear speeches by Carla, Suzanne, Anita, Hortense, Beth, Gus, Jasmine, Catherine, and me, your teacher, Jane, as we all try to overcome the fear of speaking.
Hello, I'm Jane Comer, and welcome to my class, The Fear of Speaking. This is a special class I've been teaching, helping people overcome their greatest fear, the fear of public speaking. It's actually a greater fear than death, if you can believe it. My students have been mostly working hard, and we've made great progress, and part of the class was having to do a final recital where they would each do a speech that they had written that I had not seen ahead of time. And that's what this was meant to be. We had rented this nice space here, the Fuse Box Theater, thanks to the folks at Fuse Theater Ensemble, and we were all going to assemble here, and we were going to watch my students finally make their first big public speech. And then, unfortunately, as we all know, COVID-19, the coronavirus hit, and we were all sheltering in place, which made it really difficult for everybody to show up in one space to do their speeches. And I got to thinking, though, maybe we could just all do our speeches on that Zoom thing on the internet. That sounded like a great solution. A lot of people have been doing that. And so I got that all set up, a special Zoom room. I paid the subscription price to get the deluxe room with no time limits. And everything was set to go today. I came down here since we had already rented this room anyway, just in case one or two decided they wanted to do their speech in person. Nobody showed up, and unfortunately, nobody's logged into the Zoom room. It's just me, unfortunately, and so that kind of leaves me at kind of a loss. I mean, these words they wrote, they were important. It's important their words be heard. And so since I happen to have copies, they sent me all copies of their speeches in special binders. So I would have them here to read along as they presented them. I've not actually heard what these speeches are yet. That was their assignment, to create something I had not seen. But I do have the copies right here, as you can see. So what I was thinking I would do, since you're all there and I'm here, is to go ahead and read their speeches for them. Is that something you'd like me to do? Well, it's a good thing most of you said yes. I did hear a couple of no's out there, but you know, to be perfectly honest, no matter what you said, I was going to go ahead and read these anyway. So let's go ahead and get started. It's just a wonder that we can do all this thanks to digital photography and digital cameras. I just love this. And now, wait a minute. If I'm holding the camera here, how are you seeing me? I guess we'll figure that out later. Right now, let's begin our class on the fear of speaking.
One of the more common types of speeches a person may find themselves giving is a biography. This biography may be of themselves, but it can also be about somebody else, even someone famous. Carla will now give a speech about Olivia Newton-John. Well, this is embarrassing. As you can see, Carla didn't put a speech in her binder. She just sent me this empty binder. And that's a real shame because she was doing so well in the class, but I guess she just couldn't finish that last speech. I guess she was meaning to do one on the famous singer Olivia Newton-John. I'm not certain if any of you out there remember her. She was quite famous in her time, and I guess some people to this day still remember Olivia Newton-John because she was pretty good. She was that singer for whom 2 names were not enough. She needed 3. Olivia Newton-John. And I've got a story about Olivia Newton-John. I'll go ahead and tell you my story in place of what Carla was going to tell you. My story actually starts back in the mid-70s. Olivia had this massive #1 hit song called Have You Never Been Mellow? And what was amazing about the song was the way she went overboard expressing a female energy in that ballad. A lot of singers at that time, male or female, depended on a certain masculine energy, but not that song. That was pure female energy. And it's not that there's anything wrong about female energy or masculine energy, it's just that they are a little bit different, and that song was full of that feminine energy. Now back then, if we liked a song, we didn't have the option of just hitting repeat on our digital media player. What we would have to do is, we had a couple of options. We could buy the record. We had something called records and record players then. Or we could listen to the local top 40 radio station. We also had something called radio stations then too. And if a song was really popular, they might play it 4 or 5 times in an hour. So you turn on the radio and just wait for your song to appear. And every time Have You Never Been Mellow came up on the radio, I would just listen to it in awe of that female energy, wishing that someday I would be able to express that female energy myself. And then I would start crying because it wasn't going to be possible for me because I was transgender. Now, the years went by. I got heavily involved in live theater as a performer. And Olivia went on to success after success. She had more hit records. She was in a movie called Grease that is still popular to this day. And then she was in another movie, one that wasn't quite so popular. It was called Xanadu. And it was so bad in some ways that it became treasured for its badness, what they call a cult classic in that sense, a camp classic. And so people would watch the movie just to kind of laugh at how bad the movie was. And now, several years later, they made a musical out of Xanadu, the movie, just because it was so funny, and it was kind of a way of making fun of the movie. In the meantime, I had gone on with my stage acting until I reached a point where, well, it just wasn't possible for me not to be me anymore. I needed the transition. I needed to be myself. And when I did that, a lot of doors closed to me. It looked like I was never going to be able to act on stage again. Nobody wanted to have anything to do with me at that point, I'm afraid. And so I became an avid audience member. I love theater so much. Well, I can sit in the audience and experience that way, I guess. And I became quite the tourist when it came to theater. I would travel around the country looking at good productions in various theaters everywhere. And of course, I went to New York. And it was right at the time Xanadu the musical was playing on Broadway, so I got tickets. Now, they had something they were doing for that show where they had a limited number of seats where the audience actually sat on the stage for those who would dare to do that. I dared. And when I arrived, they put me center on the stage. I would be in full view of the audience. And when they started the show, which was a very campy show, the actors came up to me at some point and did some shtick, and I gave them a great reaction take. That was something I was always good at in my acting, was doing reaction takes. So I just pulled a face. And the audience broke out laughing. Now, everybody else that was sitting in the audience part of the stage were scared stiff. None of them were reacting at all, but it was no big deal for me. I just let go of that face, and the audience seemed to love me. And the actors realized that, and they kept coming back to me over and over again, and I kept supplying them with yet another reaction take, and the audience just kept laughing. Now, part of Xanadu the musical was if you sat on the stage in the audience section, you were considered part of the cast for that night. So at the end of the performance, you would leave via the stage door with the other performers because you had been, in a sense, a performer that night. And so I did so, and I found myself on 44th Avenue there in Manhattan. And I was right next to the St. James Theater, Sardi's restaurant. Across the street, there was the famous Schubert Alley. In other words, I was right in the core, the very center of commercial American theater. And as I was standing there on the sidewalk, this little girl came up with her playbill from Xanadu and asked me to sign it. So I did so. And she turned around very happy and told her mother that, Mommy, she was my favorite in the whole show. And it was then that I realized, well, maybe I have a future acting in theater after all. And it was all because of Olivia Newton-John.
Another type of speech people are often asked to give once reaching a certain age is a eulogy. Suzanne will now give a eulogy for someone she knew most of her life, but never really liked.
I never really liked her, nor her me. I'll never forget the first time we met. It was during the 5th grade. She'd moved from Orange County. I'd moved up the year before from San Diego County. Of course, we took an instant dislike to each other. She didn't like the mole on my cheek, and I certainly didn't like that her eyes were just slightly crossed if you looked at her from just the right angle. We disliked each other because we were just so completely different from each other. She was Baptist, I was Methodist. She liked to eat Cocoa Krispies for breakfast, I Cocoa Puffs. She liked spearmint chewing gum, I was double mint all the way. She was best friends with Amy Evans, and I was best friends with Lori Jones, who lived right across the street from Amy Evans. Lori and I would walk the halls of school, and I'd see her walking with Amy, and we would give each other the evil eye, because, well, we never really liked each other. Now, don't get me wrong, well, sometimes we would eat lunch together because it was a small school district, and sharing meals could not always be helped. And we would work on occasional school projects together for the same reason. And we'd be at the same parties, we're on the same teams, in the same school plays together. I mean, after all, it was both a small town and a small school district, but we never really liked each other. Now, It is also true we were bridesmaids for each other, once again, because it was such a small town and wedding parties can be so very difficult to fill out. And after we both moved out of town to different cities far away, well, we did correspond, but when two people know each other as long as we have, that was to be understood, to be expected. And we certainly spent a lot of time visiting each other at class reunions simply for the same reason. But we absolutely never liked each other. Then I received word that she'd been killed in a car accident. And I really can't explain this, but I was devastated. Though we had never really liked each other, I had grown so used to our correspondence and visits that I sobbed and sobbed over not having them any longer. One thing about her that had always irked me was that she was such an obsessive planner. She had left instructions in the case of her death. She had requested that I come here to her funeral and give this eulogy. The nerve. Most likely because she knew how good I was with words, and for no other possible reason. But I'm at a complete loss. You see, we never really liked each other. Sometimes a person has to describe where they work, such as career day in elementary schools. Anita will now give such a speech. She calls it call center servitude. The scripts! Oh my God! The dreaded scripts! Hello, this message is for Jack. My name is Anita and I'm calling from Circumspect Research. In the past, you contacted us with an interest in our research studies, and I'm calling to offer you a sesame seed allergy study that would be of interest for you. If this be of desire for you, please give us a call at 888-666-8686. We are open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. We located in Albuquerque across from the doggy hospital. If you're thinking, why, that script's not even grammatically correct, you're right. Hello, this message is for Wendy. My name is Anita and I am calling from Circumspect Research. In the past, you contacted us with an interest in our research studies. I am calling to offer you a sesame seed allergy study that would be of interest for you. If this be of desire to you, please give us a call at 888-666-8686. We are open Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. We are located in Albuquerque across from the doggy hospital. Outbound phone call after outbound phone call. The people on the list I was calling were used to being called by Circumspect Research several times a week. Once you were on their list, there was no way off. So they never answered the phone, letting all the calls go to voicemail, and I was not permitted to change one stinking word of the script. I want to know what happened
to my script, the one I had for my life. This wasn't supposed to be how it was. In my script, my American life was supposed to be about fancy but fun dinners that my boyfriend would take me to in his convertible jalopy. Where's my malted milk? Where's my boyfriend? Where's my easy receptionist job? All I am is a robot. Nobody wants my input. Every second of my day is monitored, recorded, and analyzed. I am a prisoner of my handset. Hello. This message is for Ska. Oh, whatever. My name is Anita, and I'm calling from Circumspect Research. In the past, you contacted us with an interest in our research studies. I am calling to offer you a sesame seed allergy study that would be of interest for you. If this be of desire to you, please give us a call at 888-666-8686. I can't guarantee that I'll be living by then, but if you are interested, we are open Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. We're located in Albuquerque, across from the doggy hospital. Ah!
In a democratic society, sometimes a person has to, as they say, take it up with City Hall. Hortense does just that in this recreation of an address she gave to the City Council in 1989.
Oh, hi, Tommy. How's Melissa? Well, hi, Jeremy. How are you doing? Well, I know it's been a long time since I've had one of my parties. Maybe before too long, I can get another one up and going and we can all have a good time again. And anyway, I'm so happy you on the City Council have all invited me here to share my experience with you today. I'm not often called to speak in front of people. I'm usually busy making certain everybody's got enough of a cocktail in their glass and that sort of thing. But here goes. I better read this because it's real hard for me to talk about this. And, well, anyway, I'd learned that there was an illness among us and that it's killing people, but not anyone that I would care about. And I was not at a severe risk for getting it myself. Oh, what a relief that was. I could just go on with life as normal. And I was having a party, and, you know, it would have been a real shame to let an epidemic get in the way of my fun. But an epidemic, if it was that, it would be killing people I know. Many people, even me. This was not an epidemic. Just a mere illness that only affected a few people I didn't even know. It would have no effect on my life whatsoever, so party on I did. I was taken by surprise when I went to my favorite baker to order a cake for my party, only to find that the illness had taken his life. Well, I was relieved to know that just by visiting his bakery, just doing that alone had not put me at any risk of catching the illness. However, I was sad just the same. He had not only baked the very best cakes in town, but he had told the sweetest jokes, always full of humor, always with a wonderful gleam in his eyes. And now I would never enjoy his cakes, or his jokes, or that gleam in his beautiful eyes ever again. I did manage to find another baker who made okay cakes, However, upon stopping by my favorite party favor shop, I discovered it was also closed, and for the same reason. Now, in this case, the owner of the shop had been a personal friend of mine who always went out of her way to make personally engraved paper napkins for whatever occasion I had planned. But now, she was dead because of the illness. And I had to find another shop. I did so, but the owner of that shop did not have the time or the inclination to create personally engraved napkins. But I purchased from him anyway because, well, this was going to be for my dear brother's birthday, and I had no other options anymore. Now, despite the inconveniences, I finally, with more difficulty than usual, got my party put together. However, it ended up having to be canceled anyway. My dear, sweet brother, who I love more than anything in the world, also died from the illness. But I would go on living, for I was not at severe risk of getting the illness, and it would have no effect on my life at all. I mean, gentlemen, this illness has long had a name. Bigotry. Isn't it time we did something? Well, that's my story. What's your story?
A common form of speech is where we try to describe to someone else how much they hurt us. Beth reenacts the time she ran into an old friend.
Amy? Amy? Is that you? Oh my goodness, so how are you? Well, this is really eerie. I was just thinking the other day about you, trying to remember how long it's been since I've last seen you, and I realize it's been at least 7 years. Can you believe that? Well, how are you? Well, how's Tony? Oh, I'm very sorry to hear that. Well, remember when we realized we'd been friends for 30 years and how we decided to celebrate by taking a girls' trip to Seattle? Remember that? And how even though it was raining, things were going nicely until we got just past Tacoma. And then all of a sudden we had a flat tire. And remember how you managed to somehow get the car off the road and down the off-ramp, and right there at the end of the off-ramp there was a tire store? Oh my goodness, how lucky was that? They pulled this nail out of the tire that had a really weird yellow top to it. I remember that. And they put a new tire on, and we were on our way to Seattle. And when we got there, we parked in this temporary spot right next to the door, and we went in and checked into the hotel. And do you remember how upset we were, though, when we came back outside and saw that there was another flat tire on the car with the same kind of yellow top nail sticking out? And remember how angry we were at that tire place for not carefully checking all the tires to make certain there wasn't another nail out there that had gotten picked up. Remember that? Do you remember how nice the hotel was, though? They let us keep our car there in that 15-minute spot all night. That was a big deal in Seattle, let me tell you. And do you remember the next morning how they were so kind to call another tire store that rushed right over with a mobile unit, and they took that tire off and put a new tire on, and we were all good to go again? Remember that? And how we went on to shop until we dropped, and to eat until we dropped, and we talked and talked and walked and rode the monorail together. Remember all those things we did in Seattle? I certainly do. And I also remember how you said right when we were getting ready to leave that you hadn't had a good time. And how quiet things were in the car as we made our way back to Portland. And then, just after a bathroom break in Centralia, I remember how we suddenly felt the feel that you get from another blown tire. And how we barely made it onto an island in the middle of the freeway. And wouldn't you know it, just then, two different men in different cars pulled off. They both worked together and quickly got that tire changed for us. And as they were leaving, I was so grateful. I was waving goodbye to them. And as I was doing so, I remember looking over and seeing that you were in the car and you were driving off without me. I remember standing there in the rain. I was cold. I needed a coat. I needed my best friend. I needed a ride. You just abandoned me there. You wouldn't return my calls. You wouldn't respond to my messages. And you know, there was something really weird as well. I remember when those men were changing the tires, I saw a box in the trunk of your car. A box of nails with that same yellow color on top. Yeah, I remember that, Amy. You disappeared from my life without even a goodbye. It's as if I never meant anything to you at all. And maybe I didn't. So, how are you?
Gus did not like this class very much. His boss made him sign up for it. His speech is called, "It Takes a Lot to Satisfy Me."
I've gone to the green room. I really don't want to do Gus's speech at all. It's just that he was such a pain. Excuse the language, he was such an ass. And I really don't want to do a guy. I mean, how do you do a guy anyway? I guess you get your voice kind of down like this. Well, let me give it a try right here. I'm not doing it any place but right here, just to get it over with, because I did promise I would read everybody's speech, even Gus's. Let's go. Well, hello. I hope you're enjoying this recital. I know I'm not. Our teacher doesn't know it, but I never even planned to be there. Virus or no virus, I was never going to be there. I feel sorry for all of you who are. Well, at least it's not one of those one-person plays. I mean, where's the spectacle with that? The massive scene changes, the elaborate costumes, you won't find them there. You know, it takes a lot to satisfy me. And so far, I haven't found it. I don't like having to speak to people. That's not the only thing I don't like, though. Among the things I don't like, the things that don't satisfy me are hemming and hawing. Oh, how I hate hemming and hawing. Poems. Oh man, how I hate poems. The sun. I hate the sun. Moochers. Get a job, moochers. People calling me to take part in medical studies. And most of all, I hate me, myself, and I.
Once in a while, a person may be asked to get up in front of a room full of strangers and produce their memories of someone everyone once knew long ago. Jasmine will now present the speech she gave at a theater industry gathering. Her memory of the angel of romance.
Hello, I'm Jasmine, and I hate people. You might want to know where it all started. Well, that's not really important. It was my childhood. It all began with a type of chewing gum called Altogether chewing gum. Do you all remember that chewing gum? It was a very special gum. I just couldn't stop eating their cinnamon flavored gum. And they came with 2 pieces of gum in each wrapper. One piece was for you, and the other one was for a friend. And the problem was, I didn't have any friends when I was 11 years old that I could give that other piece of gum to. So they just all piled up in my bedroom, unchewed, these unchewed pieces of gum. I mean, I could chew my pieces, but those pieces were meant for a friend. So they just piled up, and I just decided right then and there, I hate all people. Hey, you. I know you. And I know you, and you. Oh, and I especially know you. I saw your last play. I've seen all of your plays. You. Yes, I saw your play, the one that you were just in, and it brought back wonderful memories of all those times you used to be so good in other plays. What happened? And you. Did she ever forgive you? Well, I'll get your answer later. Well, you see, don't take this personally, but I hate all actors. Now, where that started, well, that's not important either. What happened here in town. Is Lisa Rinaldi here by any chance? No, I guess she's not. Well, it started with Lisa Rinaldi. I saw her in a play, and she was really good. And I got to thinking I wouldn't mind being friends with her. That would be so great. We could eat Danishes on Sunday morning and talk about men. So I went to the lobby after the play was over and waited for her. And she came out and she had a very long conversation with somebody else, but I waited my turn. And when she was done with that person, I stepped forward and introduced myself to her. And wouldn't you know it, Lisa Rinaldi looked right at me and said, I hope you'll understand, I haven't time to speak to people like you. And then she just marched right out the door, leaving me there with an open mouth and a hatred, an absolute hatred of actors like you. For that reason, I really shouldn't have liked Dennis. Dennis was a human being, that was a strike. Dennis was an actor, that was definitely a strike. And what's more, Dennis was gay. Oh, didn't I mention I hate gay people too? And where that started, that's also not important. What was in my apartment? I had this roommate for 3 years named Barry. And he was supposed to be my roommate, but I just wanted to have a relationship with him, but he never made one move. Finally, we got into it. I wanted to know why he didn't find me sexy. And the argument got so bad that it ended with me packing up my stuff, throwing my stuff in my car and driving off, Barry trying to stop me, and I inadvertently drove over his foot, breaking his toe. And the outcome of all of that is he finally came out as gay. So because of Barry, I hate all gay people. So it's not personal. We happen to be gay. It's just because of Barry that I hate gay people. But Dennis was gay. But somehow, I liked Dennis because he seemed to hate people as much as I did. Now, where I met Dennis was at a bookstore we were working at. I had a regular full-time job, but that didn't keep me away from people enough. So I got a job in retail. That really kept me away from people and all the hours I wasn't working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, you understand. And Dennis seemed to hate those people that came into the store as much as I did. If somebody came in asking where to find a certain book, he'd always give them the same answer, right down the center aisle, and you turn to the left, no matter where the book actually was. And then he would turn to me, and we'd just kind of snicker. We bonded instantly. Another thing Dennis liked to do was if somebody came into the store, every once in a while, if he didn't feel like giving them the wrong directions, he'd just start talking in some strange foreign language that didn't actually exist. He'd just do that, and people would look at him, and after a moment just kind of sadly shake their heads and walk off. And I just loved it when he did that. But anyway, after a while, I started doing something very unusual. I started having Saturday night dinners with Dennis. Now, it wasn't like it was just us two together. It was actually his regular night for having dinner with a theater friend of his. And so I was sort of the tag along, but I tagged along anyway. Now his friend was really strange, as it turned out. Have you heard of those transgender people? Well, this friend of Dennis's turned out to be one of those. I really don't understand those transgender people, do you? But it was the price I had to pay to be with Dennis, so I put up with this person. And I would sit and watch them at these restaurants, just telling their theater stories over and over again. And I'm sorry, I know you want me to tell you some of Dennis's theater stories. That's the whole reason you invited me here, but I can barely remember any of them. There was one story that seemed pretty funny. He was in some production of a musical, I think it was called Little Abner, and the last night of the show, some chorus member thought it would be really funny to pull practical jokes on everybody, so he went around messing up with everything, and Dennis's character had this speech that he read at the end of every show, and he broke some kind of acting rule by not actually memorizing the lines. He had them written on the paper he held that was part of the proclamation he was reading. Well, anyway, that last night he got his prop and went out on stage and looked down and saw that instead of the lines that he usually recited, it was filled with every obscenity known to the human race. And he just stood there staring at this proclamation, wanting to know what he could possibly do. He couldn't read those words, at least not in the conservative town this play was being produced in. And so finally he thought he did something real clever. He handed the piece of paper over to the actor standing next to him, who was playing the sheriff. And he said to the sheriff, "Well, why don't you go ahead and read this for me?" And the actor playing the sheriff took one look at the piece of paper, saw the foul language, and instantly handed the paper back to Dennis saying, "Well, Pappy, you know I can't read." And somehow Dennis managed to get off the stage. So that's the theater story I remember about Dennis. Now, I actually prefer to remember his real life stories. He was just crazy everywhere he went. my favorite real-life story might be the time that he went to a 7-Eleven to get a bunch of Diet Pepsi. He was always drinking Diet Pepsi. And he came back out to get in his car, and when he got behind the wheel, he noticed everything seemed strange. There was like this fence between him and the back seat, and all these radios and electronic devices. And it was only after a couple of minutes he realized he was sitting in a police squad car. What's more, when he looked out the window, he saw the police officer the car belonged to standing there with a strange look on his face. And somehow Dennis got the officer to laugh at how he had somehow mistaken that squad car for his little tiny Honda car. And that was just Dennis, though. He was able to get everybody laughing at him. Even I laughed all the time with him. It was just something about him that gave you some hope. Even if you hated all of humanity, Dennis was that person that would somehow bring you out of that hatred. And it didn't work totally on me. I still hate all of you. But honest to goodness, I love Dennis. Now, you're asking, I heard a lot of people asking about this nickname Dennis had, the Angel of Romance, and where that all came from. Well, it was that transgender friend of his. She was a bit of a writer, and she kept joking that she was going to write a play about him someday and call it the Angel of Romance, because Dennis was not, he didn't seem like the most romantic type in the world. He was a little too sour and sarcastic to be romantic, so it was rather a sarcastic, funny joke that he would be in something, called the Angel of Romance, because that was definitely not what he seemed to be. But Dennis turned out not to be what his facade was. Underneath it all, he seemed to be somebody who actually really cared about people. Really, he was always there for you. And the most important thing about Dennis is, if they still had all together chewing gum, he would have taken my extra piece. So I guess, ultimately, if you can look beyond the outside of somebody, you could actually maybe find a friend or two. I don't know. But I guess in that way, Dennis actually was the Angel of Romance. And, where it happen's not important. It was in Dennis's apartment. He was found dead from a heart attack. Well, it's been great talking to you all. I think I'll look up his friend, that transgender one. Maybe we can become friends ourselves now. She was always joking about writing that play about him called The Angel of Romance, or at least writing something and putting it up in front of people, calling it The Angel of Romance, all about him. And I'll bet you she hasn't done it.
A good way to reveal something about yourself, when otherwise the fear of speaking would prevent you, is by simply reading something you wrote as a child. It may be a diary entry or a blog entry or old love notes you saved. Catherine will now read a poem she wrote when very young.
In the atmosphere, the red glow grew on the morning that nature left no dew, when infant children opened their doors and discovered that it was the last Christmas before. The love they once thought non-existent, though their search had been persistent, was now found right underneath their skin, where, of course, it always had been. The hate they thought innate, to the point of labeling it fate, could not be found anywhere now, of course. The word was care. The children standing at their doors were not infants anymore. They had finally risen from their floor and found contentment the last Christmas before. I want to thank everyone for watching tonight. It was such a pleasure to have you as a part of our class. I only wish my students could have delivered their speeches themselves. I hope I did them justice. But what was important was you being able to listen to their words, because that's really the other side of the equation. Once you learn to overcome the fear of speaking, you also have to overcome the fear of listening. And now it's time for me to read you my speech, The Fear of Speaking.
It is said that in many ways we are all strangers, and that no matter how many words are shared, no matter how much time is spent, strangers we will remain. And now, the fear of speaking.
My dad did that. My dad could do anything. I guess it's always hard when you lose a parent, because up to the time that it happens, you've never known a world without them. My dad always amazed me. He was born in Southern California. It was 1939. Within a short time, America would be at war. My grandfather and my dad's many uncles soon went off to serve, but the war ended without my father being old enough to have very much of an impression of it. Instead, his interests soon turned toward reading. He loved the Hardy Boys mystery novels, and he collected each and every one, reading them all. My dad did that. My dad could do anything. In high school, he was on the basketball team. They won a state championship. Dad was the tallest player on the team. The school, to be honest, was so small there were only 6 players on the whole team. My dad used to tell me with a laugh that the other players didn't really do much except for this one short guard who always managed to get him the ball in just the right location so he could drop it right through the hoop. My dad did that. My dad could do anything. He met my mother, married her, and I came quickly after. Soon he found a job which required him to drive from business to business all over the county, driving a company car. If I wasn't in school, I would often go to work with him. The boss didn't mind. My dad enjoyed taking me to work with him, hoping that I would learn to be a lot like him. However, I already knew that I was different from him in significant ways. My favorite part of going to work with Dad was lunch. Often, we would go through a drive-through window, pick up some fast food, and go to a park or a playground. After eating, there would still be time for me to play. My dad tried to teach me games that he said boys love to play. Finally, the time came when I asked him, well, what if I don't want to play the games boys want to play? When he asked me why, I said, Dad, don't you know? I'm a girl. My father drove me around that afternoon in a stony silence that scared me. My dad did that. My dad could do anything. I stopped going to work with Dad after that. For a while, I continued trying to let him and everybody else know that I was a girl. However, he always seemed to get this strange, faraway look in his eyes whenever I tried to tell him. And then I noticed everyone else did too. It was everyone. I didn't like people going so far away. So I decided to start hiding myself from everyone else. It was lonely, and I felt like I was the one now going far away. Things, though, just seemed to be better that way. My dad did that. My dad could do anything. Years went by. Back then, The Wizard of Oz was only shown one time per year on TV. I always watched it. I watched Judy Garland as Dorothy, looking for a way home, a way to be herself, and discovering that she had all the power all along. Perhaps I would somehow be able to marshal that power myself. I surely wanted to hope so. I remember seeing magazines with stories on Judy Garland at the age she was currently. She was in her late 40s, so much older than Dorothy. The headlines were that she had gotten married again and was finally happy at last. I thought, well, didn't she know she had the power to be happy all along? I also remember the day not long after where the newsman on TV said that Judy Garland had passed away at the age of 47. I'm not sure if death was the home that she wanted to use her power to get to. I remember that my father tried to console me. Lots of people loved her. She'll be missed by many, he told me. A short time later, my father mentioned another news story. People at a bar in New York City had rioted with the police. He said the bar was full of people who were different, and that there were laws against being different. The police often arrested people there, but this time was different. The people fought back. Perhaps, my dad said, it was because Judy Garland's funeral had taken place earlier in the same city. Perhaps that's why they were fighting with the police, because they really, really loved Judy Garland. Years later, I learned that the name of the bar was the Stonewall Inn, and that some felt that the riot was because of Judy Garland. But I heard that theory first from my dad. My dad did that. My dad could do anything. More years passed. Rock Hudson, handsome movie star, was on the television. Perhaps it was one of his many movies with Doris Day. Or maybe it was his TV series, McMillan and Wife. What it was we were exactly watching escapes my brain. But I've never forgotten what my father said about Rock Hudson. First he said that Rock Hudson was gay. Then he started casually listing all of the gay bars in both Los Angeles and even San Francisco that Rock went to. And I wondered, how did my dad know all of that? I began to wonder if I wasn't the only person in the world hiding who I was. My dad did that. My dad could do anything. Still more years passed. I'd been living on my own for some time. A previously unknown disease, which primarily attacked men who had sex with men, killed Rock Hudson. And then my mother phoned to break the news. My father had the same illness, AIDS. My mother, who had suddenly divorced my father several years before, told me of the part of his life that my father felt he needed to keep secret all this time. Though I knew my dad's secret, we did not discuss it, because I had learned from my dad there are just some things that are not spoken of. My dad did that. My dad could do anything. additional time flew by. Time does that. And then came the time I could not hide who I was anymore. I needed to be who I really was. I needed to transition. And I needed to tell my dad, no matter how far away from me it made him go. You know, when somebody transitions, it's striking the reactions you can have from people. Many people find the news challenging, and many people have trouble processing the information, and many people just disappear from your life. Telling a person that you're transitioning is often the last interaction you ever have with that person. My father, however, made it strangely easy. He told me he loved me no matter what. His quiet acceptance was so different from the reaction of so many others. I had believed that transitioning was a form of death. It's just that I had no other options. I could no longer live pretending to be somebody I wasn't. There was, however, a very good chance that others would not allow me to live as myself. I lost most of my friends. I was laid off from a job where months before I'd been named Employee of the Year. But my dad accepted me. Because of him, I knew I could live in the world as me. My dad did that. My dad could do anything. A couple of years into my transition, I was visiting my dad. He could not stop telling me how beautiful I was. And then we went dancing. My dad took me out onto the dance floor, and we danced. We danced. It was just like I lived my entire life for this one moment, this one beautiful, singular moment where I was finally completely me in the world, and I was dancing with my dad. It was so natural, so right. My confidence in myself was complete. My dad did that. My dad could do anything. That turned out to be the only time I danced with Dad. The years continued to speed by. We visited again when possible, which wasn't possible very often because he lived in Bellingham and I in Portland. Every birthday, every Christmas, feminine jewelry would arrive in the mail, a very girlish card attached. Just knowing that my father accepted me for who I was made everything so easy in my life. Now, my father had been dealing with AIDS for a very long time, and there had been very many health scares over the years, just too many to count, where he would need to go into the hospital to have some cancer removed or even open heart surgery. But somehow, he always managed to survive. My dad did that. My dad could do anything. A neighbor of my father contacted me to let me know he was in the hospital again. The neighbor said it looked like this might be the end for my dad, and I thought, well, that was silly. He's been in the hospital so many times and always seemed to recover. Reaching him on the phone, he sounded like his usual self. Oh, there's no reason to come up here, he said. Then at the end of the call, he mentioned that he had great health insurance and that there wouldn't be any hospital bills to worry about. And I thought, well, that was odd. Why would I be worried about a hospital bill when everything was okay? I tried to talk to the hospital staff, and they asked who I was. And I told them I was his daughter, and they said, well, he didn't list any daughters on his next of kin. I made the trip up. And my dad died. We arranged to have my father cremated. I was named in the will as the executrix. The lawyer my father had been working with stated that he had not known of my gender transition and that my name was my old name on all of the documents that my father had recently put together. I quickly learned that while my father accepted me as a woman to my face, behind my back, and all of his interactions with everyone else, I was still his son. I had never thought of my dad as an actor. I was the actress in the family, but he was good, really good. He had me fooled. My father's support had been so important in my early days of transition. I thought he would immediately reject me. Instead, he had appeared to accept me. But it was all fake. My dad did that. My dad could do anything. Then Dad's house was broken into and ransacked. All my dad's possessions dumped out on the floors of his home. His furniture turned upside down and family photographs scattered all over. Pictures of him, pictures of me, and pictures of the two of us together from a time when I appeared to be his little boy. He just couldn't let go of the little boy he thought he knew and loved. And so he gave me to my face what he could see that I needed so much, holding tight to what it was that he needed when I wasn't around. I was angry. In addition to the usual grief that happens when you lose your father, I had this as well. My dad did that. My dad could do anything. Then it dawned on me, I only had one father. He was dead now, and I could not even confront him. I could either spend the rest of my life hating the man that he wasn't, or love the man that he actually was. Of course, knowing exactly who he was is hard because the fear of speaking kept him from telling anyone. So Dad never truly accepted my gender. But you know, there's a good many people in this world who, knowing my background, do not accept my gender. If I went around not loving people who did not accept my gender, then there very well might not be anyone for me to love. Many transgender people find that they get the best acceptance from people who don't know them, who don't know their background, who don't know they were assigned a different gender at birth. But if people don't know you completely, that acceptance can seem very empty. If I'd never been honest about who I was, I would have never had that beautiful, wonderful dance with my dad. To have that one true moment where the stars and heaven seem just right. My dad did that. My dad could do anything. Of course, people not accepting my gender means that, in a very important way, they do not know who I am. So how could they ever love me if they don't know me? All I know is, if you're so afraid of people not knowing who you are that you live your life with a fear of speaking of it, you're destined for a life without even the occasional moments of true happiness, of true connection. Besides, I know as well as anyone that you can love someone without fully knowing them. After all, I love my dad very much. I am my dad's daughter. I can do anything.
During the riot tomorrow, sirens blare down on us. Out of the dark, familiar tunnel, our train rides through. The pin of light widens to gray sky. The ground is shaking, air trembling. In the belly of us there is a chopping. A helicopter looms in the low clouds, ruined white. Chop, 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 as we step off the platform. Brightest night is what war heroes used to call storming a territory while missiles tore through stars at midnight. Midday might as well be midnight. Chop, 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 chop. Perhaps our bellies do not respond to the sound the same way. I am precious to you, but there is something about your gait. It moves with the chop, 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 chop. The helicopter's blades in sync with your step. For me, every blade whoosh has happened in every century. Is happening. Whooshes and chop chops. I feel cut into tiny slices, spread out over centuries. What century is this, I ask? All of them, you say. Chop, 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 chop. I want you to know that I'm worried, but I can't change my pace. Just like the pace you're walking is the one that's set. This path we're walking, this absolute strip of asphalt, that is our bridge into forever. All centuries. I don't think you got the gist of how revealing an answer that was. All centuries. All of them. I'm chopped to bits while you're only in quarters. That is what they mean by intersectionality. To cut a bitch is to know one, is what the ancient mystiques used to say. Maybe they still do. Then one knows too much, and that's it. Your inside's right side out. Then where is precious? I'll come right out and say it. You're white. How am I supposed to trust you during a riot? Chop, 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 chop. I've seen you exhausted before, you said after the riot. Why are you so tired? I told you. You hadn't seen me tired before, really. Are all tireds welcome? No one is trying to shoot you down the I-5 corridor, is what I say. This Mississippi muddy feeling slops into my legs, hips. It wears you down, this explaining, I explain. How many times will I be asked to spell Mississippi in my lifetime? I could never go back in time with you, no matter how bad I wanted it. What would we say to each other then? Me in burlap and shackles, my pigeon tongue, my vernacular wrapped round jaw. What? Crickets screaming, chop, 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 chop. I beg you to understand. You see my tears. You think they are love bombs from the nearby tear gas. Chop, 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 chop. I wonder if you know what direction you're going. I wonder why I went downtown for this date that is both lovely and terrifying. I'll pay for it later, when I'm vomiting my feelings in the kitchen and you ask why I'm so tired. All tireds matter. I am so tired I think I am seeing things, trees blooming in front of me, between my half-closed eyelids, between my eyelashes. How do you teach comfort? How do you teach it's been hard to come by? Cockroaches were my alarm clock growing up. I measured my hours in cockroaches for a time. They turned the dial on my clock radio. All centuries. All centuries matter. How to integrate? Do we? The pain of it, chopping through relationships regardless. Chop, 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 chop. Trees are kissing now, limbs fondling their neighbors. Crickets are screaming. I want to be alone so bad, but I never will be. You are precious to me, you say. The gray sky is a pin light again in the familiar tunnel. Then you close the door. Chop. You are precious to me, you say. Then fetch me a plate of food while I lay still. You are precious to me, you say. All centuries. Who's they? This is us we're talking about here. You add this and wipe away my tears. Chop, 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 chop. How to get my slices together? How many color bars does this globe need? After the riot, I know. I know I am precious to you. I know. The reflection you hand me is a careful one, honest. I used to think in the silence between us the sexual tension was just my own SOS. I always just want to bury myself in you forever and always, like cologne through pores, like a living ghost passing through your flesh and soul, like the Loa, bringing you to the river of spirit, and the utter, blissful bridge of ego, death, and fucking. The mouth of eternity never further, into the deep waters past Guinea, where I live, sifting smells and sounds from the rushing river of dark. Just the same, every twist of my curls is a prayer that if kindness exists, our bones will stretch under those waters, songs spieling the howling in the cavities of our skeletons with those waters. A turn of the universal egg, a tilt of the beaker. I'm at the bottom of you. You take my hand, brush my knuckles, like you're both assessing and loving a cat bristling with haste. Your fingers get plucky, probing ligaments in my body, hand-picking tuning forks causing capitulations. Maybe they're looking for me. Maybe they're looking for you. All this to say, I squirm for you to be the one to pass through me. Never was there a finer regiment you rubbing a hole in me. I just want you inside me too. I want us to be inside each other, to share lungs. By the by, oblivion is here and now, though. We knew it. We know it now. These 7 nights, 7 moons, 7 gates, 7 tombs, these generations I've spoke of, these iterations, you listen and add certain oblivions to your list. These centuries we come from. You hold me in the degrees of separation like a loving stasis. All these centuries calling. Your long-fingered hands rubbing me in, rubbing me out. Long fingers, vagal nerves learning the ropes. All these centuries. For a time I can float. You help me dip out. To be honest, it is the best gift to be a non-embryo. Both the sperm and the zygote. The undone thing that passes through. A one that got a way. I am aware, as I know you are, of all these centuries, pressing upon me like a gun to the head, an unkind reminder that you came from a loaded mechanism. Histrionic cuts are less of a mystery these days to you. So we lay together in the deep waters after all. I pull the sheet of the last gate over us. You play with my buttons, and we let the sediment come. The particulars. The particulars. You must be taking this personal. Don't be so negative. Why is everyone so negative? Fake news. Faker. Faking. I have lots of diverse friends. Robots are the future. They are so much smarter. White people's greatest hits. That's nice. The system really works. Justice is real. It would be better if they or she hadn't lived. I do more stuff than just this. I've decided to wear the pen. Where have you been? It seems like you're being modest. I understand you being modest, but you seem to be holding back, hiding. The line drawn down the middle of me. Are we supposed to just ask every time we need help? Looking for love in all the wrong places. Defense. Pointless conversations. I asked my 2 black friends. I asked a Syrian couple. I went to hold a neutral workshop and I'm white. Room to wonder why they think the way that they do. So surely they ask me, so must I. I feel called. I still feel called. That's it, I'm watching iRobot for the holidays. I love my family, not people. This is just for the family. Keep it in the family. Family. 2 sons too many angry fires. Pig's ears are gross. Offal is gross. Disgusting. I'm a vegetarian. I'm a vegetarian. I'm a vegetarian. I run an organic clothing line. Family. I run an organic family. I run a family for fun. Why are your gums so dark? Why are your teeth so big? You don't look fit. I like chocolates. I'm down with the swirl. I love brown people. I'd like a little chocolate in my bowl. My husband and I have always wanted to play with a black person in the bedroom. Black is not a sexual preference. Black people don't work. I can't believe I just said that. I stay positive. Love wins. Oh, it's soft. So very, very soft. Oh, it's big. So very, very big. Those are big. Stop stirring the pot. They keep stirring the pot, instigating racism. Inciting racism is the same as false rape. Don't need social experiments in our schools. No one will believe it's happening. Girl, 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 boy, 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 agitate. Girl in the red dress shaking that thing, ain't no one always gonna be Dr. Martin Luther King. Promise me it's your eyes I'll see when I die. I'm moving to Vegas. I have so many friends. I'm on a soapbox. You're on a soapbox. She, they, him, their, I. Should I have said it's on the shelf over their computer? You know, we have always found our strength in song, black people. These people are so sweet. If you knew them, you'd never say that to their faces. Get over it. Love is the future. Do you not think I have asked the elders? Once art is made, it's everyone's property. It ceases to belong to its maker. Hey, sweetheart. Okay, sweetie. $25 a dream catcher. $50 a workshop. Yes, dear, I'm a racist. Yes, dear. Yes. 3 or 4 girls. 3 or 4 girls. 3 or 4 girls. All white action. They in pajamas and slippers, hair in place, clipped in messes of barely preened knots, surgical masks tied cutely over their faces. If cute can be applied to a threatened life. 3 or 4 girls, maybe even 5, swim through the anxiety of the Fred Meyer. It stings my nostrils, singes my skin. Every move requires a distance of 6 feet or more. 3 or 4 girls, though, rub shoulders, hold hands, brush hair, and pick out an ugly sundress I would not be caught dead in. $45 because it is so ugly, one says. 3 or 4 girls reach for more expensive, uglier still dresses. Their parents are paying them to play at the Fred Meyer. I used to be intimidated by these girls when I was small. But more so I pitied and hated them, an innate disdain. I felt superior to them without knowing it, without knowing why. I'd say today it is mostly pity, but it evaporates like an antacid. On the way to me rushing to buy candlesticks and hair dye as fast as I can. I dodge others' fear. Sometimes it gets on me like a lick of snail slick. Someone I care about is across the store hurrying too. An internal timer. I grab half and half. They grab dry ice for a decarb project. Number 1, candlesticks. 2 hair dye, 3 hair bleach, 4 toothbrushes, 5 more half and half, 6 hairspray, 7 dry ice, 8 3 or 4 girls, 9 whiskey. Later, dinner. Flashbangs hit my friends in the stomach as they stand on their stoops. And I put candles in my basket with 3 or 4 girls blowing $300 on the ugliest maxi sundress known to man. Freddy's is a safe house for some. A creepy temple of food just like the Mormons planned it to be, where prudish pioneer dresses, disease, and a bounty of produce can still be had 200 years later. Proof positive that human beings are at large very adaptable. It's funny how creative and yet how basic the adaptations take shape. 3 or 4 girls. Half of them will probably be dead by 2040 or on Prozac, but their $45 features will be fine. The walls that surround them, fine. The silence, fine. The sounds, fine. White people and their $45 change sounds so quietly, like sharks. But touch their noses and they go still. Swim with resolve, and you may make it home. 3 or 4 girls, and you will always be waiting for me. Little fish, little fish. I used to call you little fish. Little fish, little fish. You used to swim in me, and no one but one person seems to understand that. You have never broken your stride in the water as long as I've known you. Not one bit. I used to dream you were a nightmare from Poseidon's realm. A dark horse coming up onto land on a bed of foam. I used to dream you had drowned, or that we were drowning together. You drowning, me being squeezed by invisible demons, invisible forces. Like a sponge already ripe with water. Little fish. You had a tank, a fish tank when you were 3. In it was a tiny naga, some tetra, and several goldfish. You loved the tetra best, and when the goldfish didn't survive, you never asked any questions. It all made sense to you. There'd been too many fish, no room for the carp to grow. The tiny naga, always trying to escape, seemed to ask, "What am I doing here? What am I doing here?" Really, though, I believe the naga wanted to die too, to let it all go. I was always sad that he was different. He knew he was destined for greater, more. You once had a tank of fish that I took care of. Funny that I gave the order for you to feed them, but it was me who came up behind feeding them. It was me who felt the guilt. You had fish, my little fish. You had them. Sometimes I would even catch you trying to net them out, especially the little naga. No, I would say, no, no. Today your tank is different. The water never stays in. I've continued to try and keep the tank full of water. I keep it and I keep it. But today, these days, I grow tired. I am like the little naga. I am a little born for something else. We both are. I saved your little fish. I've saved some new ones too. But who cares? Who cares about little fish? Little spotted, shimmery fish and nagas. These days I have to be resuscitated, and your tank actually has a gun on it. The one you were talking about this whole time had wheels and makes murder. And yes, there are little fish in it. How come? And who cares? We did, didn't we? Don't we? Today I fall a lot. My pupils are often shot like the dead. Little fish come shine lights into my face. Ghosts of love's little fish, and tell me to get up. Once again you are playing in the street. The fish tank is full. I promise to never let it go. And there you are, little fish, playing. Small again. Never questioning. Never worrying. Even when down the street there is bloodshed. I scoop you up and who cares? Time it moves. It doesn't move. I'm convinced we are forced to never matter. to live in two places at once all the time, like these little fish. Like the naga you actually begged me to get, but that I actually really wanted. That naga, by the way, it was the only one you cared about, and when it got away, you were sad. You knew the little naga meant to go somewhere, on purpose, somehow made it worse. Today you care less about tanks with guns. I think these days you know what it means to be a flying fish.